You're listening to Movies to Watch Before You Die, episode number 10. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Movies to Watch Before You Die, a weekly podcast that breaks down the most important movies ever made that will change the way you think, change the way you feel, and hopefully change the way you live your life. I'm your host, Mark Yazika, and back again on the show by popular vote, not by Electoral College, is Dan Helbling.
I'm jazzed to be here.
Yeah.
I'm jazzed to be here.
Jazz, that's a good word.
I know.
Jazzed. I should start using that more often.
Yeah, everybody should.
Okay. Dan, what movie are we talking about today?
We are talking about Inception today.
That's right. Inception, the 2010 film starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and directed by the wonderful Christopher Nolan. It's a very popular movie, but if you've somehow gone this long in your life without seeing it, maybe do yourself a favor and watch it now, because Dan and I are about to ruin it for you. Links to rent or buy the film are in the show notes, or you could always put your hard-earned tax dollars to work and just get it from your local library. That's what I would recommend. So moving into it, Dan, this is it's a mindfuck. Inception is a mindfuck,
Yes.
to put it bluntly. So what are some general thoughts and feelings? We just watched the film. What's going through your mind?
So this was the second time I've watched the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I watched the movie first as a senior in high school. And at the time, when I was in high school, it was more of just wow, this is cool. And now that I got to watch it again as a freshman, as an adult, I really just took more from it this time, because over the last couple years, dreams have been something that I love talking about. Like, I can easily start a conversation with somebody by saying, I had a dream last night, and then I could just talk about it, and that always like just sprouts new and different topics. So I don't know, this movie hits pretty deep, a couple levels deep, I would say. Yeah,
A couple levels deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it a couple of times, more than twice. I don't know how many, maybe 3 or 4. But each time I've seen it, it's meant a little more than it did the time before. And I don't know if it's because I'm just aging as a person or it's because each viewing is compounding upon itself. But like the film, I feel like I'm coming to understand what it has to say in better layers as I can go deeper into what it has to say. And it leaves me a little more confused. I feel like I know less about it each time I watch it, but maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. It's a good movie either way. Mm-hmm. So let's dive into it and try to make some sense of it, I guess. I think one of the most fundamental questions the film ultimately asks is, what is reality? How can we know, or do we know what is real at any given time? Is this possible? What do you think?
Oh my gosh. So do you dream much? I know we talk about this all the time, but do you dream enough? Do you dream vividly?
Yes, I'm more forgetful of my dreams than I would like to be, but I know I definitely dream every night on average, as I'm sure most people do.
Have you woken up and just had to ground yourself?
Yeah.
I do it. I do it at least once a week. I know I do it at least once a week. That I wake up and I wonder, like, is this? I'm back, right? Like, I'm here. And then it also will happen in the dream where I will realize that I'm in a dream. I've gotten to the point where I'm in the dream and I know, like, wow, well, this isn't real. And then I just
lucid
go on
dreaming.
with it. Yeah. I don't know if it's quite lucid yet, but I'm aware.
Like pre-lucid.
Yeah.
I used to have the ability when I was younger, and I would be able to do it like every night. Maybe not every dream, but like at least once a night in one of my dreams. I could just be like, oh, here's Mark in Dreamland, time to do dream shit. And I lost it. I don't know how or why. But that sort of transition period, moving from this sort of dream state to this awake state and feeling like you're in the beginning of Bohemian Rhapsody, is just like, I don't know. It's in that moment you're definitely uncertain of the nature of reality, or even the nature of the fantastical elements of the dream. But René Descartes, who is a famous philosopher, in one of his books, Meditations on First Philosophy, he actually wrote, there are never any sure signs by means of which being awake can be distinguished from being asleep. And he's completely right. And I think the sort of level of dreams that Inception shows is that we can never conclusively prove that this isn't a dream, that we're not in the Matrix, that this isn't some sub-level of reality that we're experiencing. And that's kind of disheartening. But also at the same time, I feel like this is all I know, and this is all I feel I've ever known. And so almost like worrying or questioning anything beyond that when we can't speak in certitudes is almost pointless, I guess. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, there's that theory that we're all actually in the Matrix right now.
Right.
I don't know too much about that theory. I'm aware of that it exists. I haven't found the need to go look into that more because I think it's preposterous. But I think there's always a chance that
Sure.
like what if where we're at right now, where this podcast is being hosted, like where somebody's listening, we're just in a stage of a dream and we have just no idea. Like there's always a chance in my mind. I like thinking that way, at least. Maybe that's why I always dream. I have no idea.
Yeah.
My mind wanders when I'm conscious or not, I guess. So I love the idea of the totem, and that's a huge part of knowing when you're in reality or not. But when you don't know if reality is real, how do you know if the totem is real? So that was always something. That's why I think that there was that maddening side of Inception, of the whole movie, is because like that was the crux of. Well, was her name Maud or Mal? Mal. Okay, they slurred their L's and D's in that movie.
Okay.
So I can understand like how that crux, like how she was hit by that so hard, and how he guessed it, like second guesses it all the time. But in reality, it's just like a feeling. Like in our reality, there's just a feeling of this is real life. Because when you look back at the dream is absurd and fantastic. And in the dream, you don't even, you just push that aside. You have no idea. Like you're just like, oh, there's an elephant walking down the street. That's crazy.
Right.
But if you saw that now, you'd be calling the police or something because that'd be a problem. In the dream, it's like a bunny walking down the street equivalent.
Right. In Dreamland, you really have no use of your ability to use logic or rationalize things, and you're just sort of accepting of everything. You know, the world you're presented is just okay and it's fine, and you never really compare it to the real world. And once we sort of regain consciousness and come out of that weird slumber that is dreaming, we're able to compare and contrast and realize, okay, that dream I had about being friends with a bunch of elephants was actually kind of fucking weird. Because, you know, you can't be friends with elephants when you're a person in real life. So I think ultimately the biggest takeaway is just that we need to at least be skeptical. Certainty is most likely impossible and downright improbable, I think. But as long as we can maintain some sort of healthy dose of skepticism regarding everything and just put question marks on things we tend to take as givens every now and again, that we'll be a little better off. So I don't know if this is a dream that we're in right now. If it is, that's kind of cool. Someone has a very vivid imagination.
Or not at all.
I mean, who dreams about some dude making a podcast?
I guess.
I'm almost flattered. No?
I just think, I don't know, maybe the reality world that they live in is really bland. The person who's dreaming, we'll call him like Ted. Say Ted's dreaming right now, and he's thinking of this world. I don't even want to know what the other world is that he's actually from.
Oh, that's true.
It's probably boring.
Because our dreams are simply just crazy projections of this world.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Sometimes people have really boring dreams.
Well, then let's talk about the other side of this and delve into dreaming itself. There's basically no psychological or neurological or scientific proof that delineates what the purpose of dreaming is and why we do it and really the function it serves. There's several theories that have some evidence, but there's really nothing conclusive. So I guess our guesses are almost as good as any others. So what do you think is the point of dreaming? Why do we do it? What function does it serve? What is it? Like, imagine if, like, aliens came to Earth and we were just talking about shit, just shooting the shit with the aliens.
We had to explain dreaming.
And we're like, oh, yeah, when we sleep, like, we have these weird pictures in our heads about shit that isn't real. They'd be like, what? You do what when you sleep?
They'd cranking that ignition and getting the hell off of Earth.
They're like, oh, why don't you guys stay on Earth? Like, oh, they were a bunch of fucking weirdos.
Are hallucinating every night.
Yeah.
One of my favorite theories that I heard was dreaming is the process in which you lose information and you forget things.
Right.
And I like that because, like, I think that it makes sense because when you're dreaming of things that you know and you're dreaming of things that are familiar to you. So I think throughout, like, because your brain is trying to defragment that information, I think since you're thinking of, like, familiar things, your brain just starts putting everything together and just starts making images because it's not ever, like, a one-off story. Because that's a really good point that they made in Inception is, like, how'd you get here? How'd you get to the cafe?
Exactly.
And when you think about a dream, it's just you just kind of fall into the middle of it, which I thought was a very good point because that's very true. And I think that also reinforces the if your brain's just trying to get rid of information and make space for new information. I think that's a good theory, and that's one that I kind of stand by because it kind of makes sense to me.
I like that one as well. I guess a problem I have with it, though, is the fact that, one, it's odd that I can understand that maybe that can't happen while we're awake. We need to be asleep or have to enter some sort of lower cognitive state for that to happen. But I think it's odd that we have perceptions while that happens of our experiential world. And so we're seeing and maybe smelling and hearing and feeling things all within our minds. And I guess it's just odd that our brains need to allow us to do that in order to make that process work. But the idea that we could look at our brain as a sort of computer and it just has to run a sort of disk defrag, every night just to sort of get rid of all the shit that's accumulated in it is kind of interesting.
It's insane.
Yeah, but I know a lot of people subscribe to sort of dream meanings and dream analysis, and there's definite recurrences in dreams. Lots of people have dreams of being naked or falling or flying or their teeth falling out, like
not being able to run.
Right,
that's a pretty common one,
like oddly specific things that I think they're not general enough for them to not have some greater meaning or function within our brains as a population. And so I don't know if I subscribe to the idea that everything we see in our dreams is some sort of motif for some greater meaning or real life concept, but I think there also definitely has to be some framework that we're all processing this information in under while we sleep.
See, I think dreams correlate with real life. I don't think that dreams have a meaning. I just think that you can dream about stuff that is happening in your day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely don't believe that, like, when your teeth fall out, it means something. People are always stressed. So, of course, you're going to be able to say, like, oh, if you dream about teeth being fallen out, it's going to be stressed. It's like, no, it's just that's convenient that you can say that. Did you hear about these scientists that would put nodes on people's heads and they'd find, like, where the dreams are, where your brain is most active at night, and how they're also going to try to process that information into visual information to where we could record a dream?
I haven't heard that.
It's wild.
That is crazy.
Because they legitimately think that they're going to be able to pretty much make a movie out of your nerves firing. That
is crazy.
Yeah, so like we can visually see what we're dreaming about.
Oh, I can't wait for that.
Yeah, we should look into it. Because I want to do it. I want to do it.
Yeah, because I got some good shit going on in my dreams, and I don't remember most of it.
I know I do, yeah.
So I need like a backlog.
It'd be really cool to like see what actually like started at the dream, like where you actually started the dream, and everything that you don't remember. It'd be like browning out, like it'd be like getting hammered one night, and then like I just remember you falling down the stairs, and then Mike like punching a dog, and then like we like the next morning we just put it all together in a video, and like we get to see everything that happened. I think that'd be so cool.
We could just connect the dots.
Yeah,
that would be great. There's a few other dream theories.
I don't think we're ever gonna know why that happens. And if we do, it's just a theory. I don't know how you can prove that you're actually losing memories.
I think we can come to understand it someday. I think the brain is just so large, and so much of what happens within it is just misunderstood. And I think the more we come to understand about it, the more quickly we'll come to understand things about it. And I think there's so much we don't know that it's just sort of this huge behemoth. And once we uncover bits and pieces about different things, the dots will start to connect, because everything in the brain is connected. And so it's just going to become hopefully easier and easier, and I'm assuming dreams will be a part of that. But I don't know. What do you think is the ultimate allure to dreaming itself? I mean, I look forward to sleeping for many reasons, but dreaming is like definitely one of them. And I know very often I'll wake up too soon out of a dream, and I'll try very hard to leave this real world and enter back into it. And
have you ever done it?
Yeah, sometimes.
Oh, I love it. It's the coolest
Rarely
feeling.
I can.
Oh.
And whenever you do come back in, you usually have the ability to lucid dream, and you have control over the dream. Not as much as you did before, but yeah, it's difficult, and it hasn't happened in a while. But I don't know. There's definitely an allure to dreaming and wanting to dream. What do you think is the allure to that?
It's just like movies. What was it during World War II? You go and you see a musical because a bunch of people are dying overseas. You just go and you want to be happy. And I think that this is just a way to get away from everything in the real world.
It's escapism.
Yeah.
Well, at one point in the film, Ariadne asks, why is it so important to dream? And Cobb says, because in my dreams, we are together, referring to Mao. And I think that's ultimately a huge testament to the idea that dreams let us experience things we can't otherwise experience in the real world. And so even beyond escapism and life is suffering and the world sucks and everything is shit, there's this really cool thing we can do when we sleep where we can gain the ability to fly, or see loved ones who don't exist anymore, or just do things and experience things that we couldn't otherwise do in the real world. And I think that's awesome. It's an ability to sort of tune out and focus on or look at or experience something else.
Place where good things happen. That's what I think.
Right. What about like nightmares and night tremors and
You gotta
shit?
grow up. You gotta stop having those.
Enough of that.
Yeah.
You're a grown-ass man now.
Yeah.
No more of that.
I haven't had those in forever. And the only argument I have for that is sleep paralysis, and that's not dreaming.
But in regards to nightmares and night tremors, I know they suck, but I think you gain a lot by having those a lot as a kid as well, because you sort of gain the ability to cope with stress and cope with fear and come to understand the nature of why you're afraid of things and how that sort of shapes you as a person. Because I know, like, as a kid, I was terrified of having nightmares, but it's something that you just, once your life becomes so saturated with it, it doesn't mean anything anymore. And so even now, if I were to have a nightmare, I don't think it would mean anything. And it's almost as if I feel as if I can't, not that I can't have nightmares, but they don't manifest themselves within me because I've sort of rationalized away a lot of my fears.
Sure. But that's once you realize that it's a dream and you can understand that.
Right.
And as a kid, you don't understand jack shit. You don't understand what's real and what's not. Even when you're sleeping, that's not something you ever experienced before. If it's new, it's gonna be terrifying. Like, that's a night terror.
Yeah.
And see, I completely agree. Like, dreams don't like scare me anymore. It's just like I just said earlier. Like, it's just like when sleep paralysis happens, because that is like, it's real to a point. Your mind is only hallucinating.
Yeah.
Because it's like virtual reality and augmented reality.
Yeah.
Virtual reality is a dream. Augmented reality is like mixed with real life.
Right.
And that's how I think that they differ, for sure. So I think that's the scariest part, is knowing that one is partially real life, one is not at all. So it's easy to differentiate between the two. But then, like, if you're not scared of one, why do you really get excited for the other?
I think it ultimately goes back to the fact that as a kid, you have to experience everything from sort of across the spectrum. And it's just about experience and experiencing the world. And that's sort of how you come to become a person. And I know that what I'm saying here relates back to the fact that the dreams we have and what we experience in our minds when we sleep has to relate to what we're going through and experiencing in our real lives. And I think there's definitely a correlation there. I don't know to what extent there is, but I think the fact that I've been able to move past a lot of my childhood and adolescent fears, the sort of baser instinctual fears, and move into more rational lines of thinking in adulthood, I think that definitely correlates to the fact that I don't have nightmares anymore, or I can't remember the last time I did.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
But to the idea that dreams are a form of escapism, what do you think is the ultimate function of escapism? Is it necessary, or is it a testament to our inability to cope with reality?
I think it's a break. I don't know if it's escape kind of means like to get away from permanently. And I think it's more of a brief hiatus from reality.
Well, I mean, escapism as an idea, I think...
We should call it hiatusm. I think it's more of a hiatus.
I understand we're not, like, leaving. We're not emigrating away from reality.
Permanently staying. Yeah.
I mean, anytime we watch television or movies or read books, even that's escapism. That's a way for us to leave this real world and let part of our minds enter into another one. I guess the ultimate question is, do we do this out of boredom? Are we not experiencing enough from this real world? Are we not being stimulated enough? Or is the real world too much for us to be able to handle, such that we feel that we need to find other worlds to occupy ourselves with? Are we just weak? We can't put up with all this shit around us in the world, and that we feel that we need to create other ones that better suit us?
I would say it's just like, it's like going to work. After 8 hours, you just want to sit down.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that after all this reality, you just want to say, I just want to take a break for a little bit. And wanting the dream. Not just like, I need to rest to get back to reality. It's just, I want to let my mind wander. It's kind of like a sense of creativity. You kind of feel like you wake up and you're like, I can't believe I thought about that. Like a tree that just grew cats. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And I think it's just it's a change, and it's a brief moment of, you don't have to worry about anything, and it's carefree.
Yeah.
That's what I think it is. I don't think it's because you're just bored that you want to go to a different world, and I don't think it's because you can't handle this world. I think it's just a nice change of pace.
Yeah. I guess in terms of escapism in general, I'm someone who I always feel as if I need to have my mind occupied, or I'm doing something productive in some regard to my life. And so the idea that like millions of people every night can sit down at 11 or 12 or whatever time Jimmy Fallon comes on and just watch that sort of like cultural regurgitation of things as a means to escape, because I feel like this sort of late night television is the sort of epitome of escapism. is our need to experience something else to sort of take us away from what's happening. I wouldn't say I'm definitely afraid of that, but I definitely try to steer away from those aspects of culture as much as possible, because I feel like I'd much rather face the problems this world has, or even the things I can experience this world has to give me to experience. I'd rather face those things head on than attempt to allow my mind to wander and not be able to focus on what's happening here in the real world. And not that I'm denigrating escapism in terms of being able to experience our dreams or experience other worlds through books or movies or things like that. But I think escapism as a means to sort of to cope with how hard it is to live sometimes, I guess I just don't necessarily agree with that as an idea. But I don't know, everyone's different. Some people I think are stronger or weaker in regards to what they can tolerate and how much sort of stamina they have, because it can wear you down. Like if you're working that 9-to-5 job that you just hate, you know, once you're clocking out, once you put in your 8 hours, you're done. If you need to come home and watch like sitcoms and eat your TV dinners and shit, and like that's how you cope, who am I to say you can't or shouldn't do that?
That also isn't always the case, because sometimes it's not escapism. Sometimes that's just something people like to do. You can't like work all day and then come home and be like, guess I'm going to end world hunger and just start working on that. Like that, maybe that's something somebody wants to do, but I think it also comes down to what people want to do, not what they need. I think it comes down to that. I don't think just because somebody sits down and plays video games means that that's just them trying to get away from the real world. Maybe they like to play video games and they just want to play some video games. They're not like avoiding something or hiding from something, you know?
I guess, but at the same time, I feel like it's also out of sight, out of mind. Like, how often do we think about the starving kids in Africa?
Only every time I throw something out and somebody says, oh, starving kid in Africa could eat that. And then I'm like, well, can't send it to him right now because it'll be moldy by the time it gets there.
I think it's usually more about like, maybe you shouldn't throw that food away because there are starving kids in Africa. But
they don't directly correlate at all.
Well, it's food waste, and it's, I don't need to tell you about food waste.
Yeah, I understand food waste.
We made a documentary about it.
I understand food waste.
But the ultimate point I think I'm driving at is that, and I don't want to get too deep into this because this is like another podcast episode for some other movie we can watch.
Podcast within a podcast. You know what they call that? Podcastception.
That's right. I think it's, I don't know if it's right or wrong or what the ultimate message we take away from it is, but there's something a little silly or cruel or malicious in the fact that millions of Americans can come home from their jobs every evening and just sort of tune out everything else that's happening in the world and wind down and essentially escape while there's just shit happening all over the world. And there's bad things and there's problems, and these sorts of things could be made better by having people sort of being engaged and turned on and focusing on them. And we have an entire population of people that I would argue is just unable to do that. They don't have the mental stamina or fortitude or sometimes even the time. And I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not saying that like we need to stop playing video games and watching movies and like having fun and enjoying ourselves. But I think there's a better way we can manage these sort of priorities and problems, and we just need to look at escapism in a different way. I feel bad escaping from this world when there are people who can't even enjoy reality in the first place. Like this world's not good enough for me. I need to go somewhere else. There are people who want nothing more than to just be able to enjoy this reality, and they're just living in complete and utter shit, and they want nothing else to escape, but they can't. Makes you feel bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
So those are my long-winded thoughts on escapism. So we've sort of talked about the allure to the sort of fantastical, the sort of dream world states of things. Let's look at the dichotomy between that and the allure to experiencing reality. What is it about reality that sometimes makes it greater than these sort of fantastical dream worlds? Not just dreams themselves, but other worlds, dream worlds, virtual worlds.
It's real.
Right, but what qualities does reality possess that causes us to deem it greater?
More control. I feel like you have more control over the reality.
Right.
And I think that it's more rewarding here.
Yeah.
The longevity. Because I think everything else is disposable. Like we've seen video games come and go, so we'll see virtual reality kind of come and go and it'll find its like part in our world.
Right.
But you can't, there's going to be some weirdo out there who's going to just live in virtual reality, and God bless his soul, like
I think a lot of people might engage in that.
I think that's so weird. Like, we just played we did some virtual reality stuff last night, and that was fun. Like, that was fun. So much fun, and like I would love to do it again. But how can you make that your world? It's more fun just because you're escaping. It's more fun because like you're going from where we are right now to somewhere just like heightened and fantastical, and it was cool. But that's not reality. Reality is like where you have relationships and where you have tasty food and where you have long hikes, and I don't see anything being able to supersede reality.
I hear you. I think, I mean, I agree right now, like, reality is the bee's knees. Like, this is the shit, like, nothing competes with reality right now. I think the problem is, in the film, we're presented with the ability to enter into dream worlds, and we see Cobb and Mal go into this sort of limbo dream world state where they live a lifetime. And we're entering a time in our current reality where virtual reality will eventually be able to have all of the capabilities that our real world has, and more so in the fact that you can literally control the world. Like, you are your own sentient being right now, and I have no control over you or what you do or any of those sorts of things. And in virtual reality, I'll be able to manipulate those sorts of things. We can discuss the moral implications of that another time, but there's a definite allure to having that kind of power and that kind of freedom. And so in that regard, it almost raises the question, can reality be defined by the person? Can reality be subjective?
If you look at it like in levels or in tiers or in whatever you want to go with numbers, 0 is where we're from, and like somebody wants to escape to level 1. Level 1 is not real, but they can be like, I like this more, so they can stay there. They can make that their place. I don't think they can call it their reality because they're never that's not like it.
But at the same time, we don't know if this is it.
Yeah, but right now this is it to us. This is the most people's it is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
This is the most people's it, and I think that anything below it, like if you just go into virtual reality and you say this is where I want to stay for the rest of my life, you're in virtual reality. You're not in reality.
What if we could create a reality that everyone on Earth could live within, and it was a better world? We could create some sort of utopia.
That's just something within our reality.
It'd be like the Matrix, except we're not batteries.
Okay, so there's virtual reality, and then there's reality. If we choose to go into it, we
would choose to go into it.
I understand what you mean by subjective reality. Like, subjectively, you can say this is where I want to live, but that's not what I don't think that will ever be the case. No one will be able to just say, like, this is now my reality.
I think we're living in a world now where people can say this is my reality. You ever seen a Trump voter?
Well, they're in our reality, so we're in the same reality.
Right. Like, it's not like an Inception type of
Correct.
reality, but I think we've already proven as a species that we can define our own reality. I think reality is definitely subjective.
Okay.
We can look at facts and figures and knowledge, and we can simply outright deny it and say, I choose not to believe those things. This is the reality I live in. And in what ways do you think virtual reality differs from dreaming or dream reality as a sort of function?
Consciousness is what differs between reality and dreams. And when you're going into virtual reality, you're still conscious. So that's where I think that line is drawn.
And something else that would be obviously different and kind of cool is that once we enter a virtual reality, we'll be able to most likely still maintain all of our cognitive functions.
Correct.
Whereas when we enter our own minds in a sort of dream reality, we lose a lot of those. And at the same time, we currently control what virtual worlds we would enter because we're the ones creating it right now. And our subconsciouses are essentially in control of the dreams we enter. So we have very little control. So if we had to take the reality versus dreams dichotomy, and you could only pick one world to live in and experience for the rest of your life, which would you choose?
Reality.
Which one do you think reality is
I
better?
would choose reality, yeah. Dreams are lonely.
But it's not...
You're alone.
It's not just... It's not just one... You're not just going into one random dream you have. This is dreamland. You could do a Mal and Cobb thing if you want for the rest of your life.
Do I know that I'm in a dream?
If you want.
Reality.
Okay, why?
Because it's lonely in a dream. You're alone. You can't be with people.
I just told you could be with people.
She's not real.
How was Mal not real?
Okay, so the person that I'm with is going to be real?
Yeah, how was she
Who's
not
the person?
real?
Who do I get to be with?
I don't know. Whoever you want.
Okay.
Or don't want. I don't. It's your dream
Why would I
world.
choose to be with someone I don't want to be with?
It's your dream world.
But in the dream world, I get to be with whoever I want.
It's your dream world.
Any people I want, but they're real people.
Yes.
I'm just defining the parameters of this hypothetical question.
Yes, it's your dream
And yeah,
world.
dream world. I'll just have everybody in there, and we can do it. We can just do whatever we want. We can make a pickle room, like a pizza room. We can have
Just have a room for everything.
yeah, cotton candy room. Like it'll just be a bunch of rooms of whatever you want to do. And as long as you're with real people, that would be awesome. And since it's my dreams, I can say murder. It just can't happen here. You can't kill people here. Oh, nobody can go hungry here. If that's the case, I'm gonna make that the coolest world ever with all the people that should be there.
Does that idea contradict the idea that reality supersedes dream worlds, though?
What?
Because it's not real.
You just said I could pull whoever I want in there. As long as I have people, I think it's real. Real people. As long as real people are there, it's real.
I don't know if I agree.
Okay, that's fine. You just don't get to come to the cotton candy room.
Fuck. Okay. Well, no, I don't. How do you define reality? What is
Consciousness. I think it's consciousness. And if you're talking about living in the Inception level,
I understand.
Of whatever I want,
So
they are conscious.
if you have your
They're
own
conscious
dreamland,
as fuck.
right? Conscious as fuck, right? If you have your own dreamland,
Yeah.
and I enter into it with my own consciousness,
Yeah.
my own thoughts, my own feelings, me,
Sure.
and this world we're in right now still exists.
Okay.
What is reality? What does it mean then?
Reality is the real world. So wherever that last person that is dreaming. But hey, if we're going cotton candy, that sounds awesome, and that would be the place that I'd want to hang out for the most of my life.
I don't know. I like that pickle room.
Pickle room's all yours. I don't like pickles.
Okay, otherwise you dream of a pickle room.
I don't know. I just thought
Just to
pickles-
have it.
Pickles are. Some people like pickles.
I mean,
It's everybody's world at that point.
not enough to spend a whole bunch of time in that room, but
Hey, but if you have a hamburger and you're walking by, you got to get a pickle and throw it on.
you're
there.
right. You're right.
So yeah, I think preferentially I would choose the dream world just because you could have a lot of fun there, and as long as there's people there that are also conscious, they're not just projections. I would love that. That'd be awesome. All happiness and sparkles, and you can do whatever you want. But then there's reality, which is cooler because it's way more like our reality is definitely cooler than our dreams. But if you're talking about the shit they do in Inception, I would rather be in there for sure.
I think I agree with you. I can't articulate the problems between what makes something essentially real. I think it goes back to the fact that I think reality has to be subjective, and it has to be something that you define as a person, and that we have to accept that even though this world we live in right now is defined as reality, it ultimately is meaningless and doesn't do anything for us.
So it's wherever our conscious is.
Perhaps.
Great. Then
So-
everywhere is real.
Right, if it can be conceived
I
or
like
or
that.
experienced.
I like that a lot more.
So in the time that we're dreaming, that is reality. That is real in that moment of time.
I like that. I would rather that be the case.
I think that is I mean, I have no proof. It's just a philosophical thought, but I think that is the case.
I would like it to be.
But to your point earlier about reality superseding dream worlds, or at least ones in which you don't have utopian control over, there's the discussion that Mal has with Cobb whenever they enter the sort of limbo land when she has Fisher, and Mal says, "I'm the only thing you do believe in anymore." And Cobb says, "I wish that more than anything, but I can't imagine you with all your complexity, all your perfection, all your imperfection. You are just a shade of my real wife. You're the best I can do, but you're just not good enough." And so there's also this idea that without being able to, pull people in from reality to a dream reality, the essence of reality itself cannot be captured or recreated in a secondary sort of reality. And that's something I think a lot of people need to understand, especially in terms of people who just like to escape and get away.
Oh, yeah.
That there's an essence here in this real life that needs to be focused on. And there's another scene whenever the gang goes to meet the chemist, and they go into the basement of the one building, and there's everybody hooked up to different dream machines, the passive machines. And Eames says they come here every day to sleep, and the old man working there says, no, they come to be woken up. The dream has become the reality. Who are you to say otherwise? And as an antithesis idea, I think that's the ultimate testament to the subjectivity of it. And in that, if you're living this life to live a dream life, if you're looking forward to that sort of a world, then that has become your reality.
Mm-hmm.
And no one can say otherwise.
That's very true.
Okay, let's move on to the title of the film. What do you think the concept of Inception means to you in regards to the notion that ideas can be implanted in other people's minds? Not by entering people's subconscious and going into their dreams and shit, but simply by sharing an idea with someone in the physical world. So I guess it's not inception, more of conception. But where do your ideas come from? If you look at the nature of an idea,
Sure.
does an idea originate from within you?
I mean, you form it from experiences. So however your moral character has developed, so whatever that came from, leads to how you make decisions. And however you make those decisions lead to whatever experiences that you get to have, and whatever experiences you get to have can lead to like an idea. If you were brought up by your parents to always treat everybody the same, treat people how you want to be treated, you wouldn't make fun of a kid. You wouldn't poke fun at a kid for, I don't know, let's go as extreme as you can for being black. You wouldn't be like poking fun at somebody because they look different. And then if you didn't do that, then you would always be accepting people, and then it'll just snowball to a point that you might be an activist for equality amongst races. Then let's say the same thing, except your parents didn't teach you that, and you just followed what another kid was doing, which was making fun of somebody who was black. And then whenever you get older, it snowballs, and then you're an employer who works at like a donut shop, and then you're interviewing people, and then you consciously decide to not hire somebody because they're black. Like that, I think that all of your ideas stem from just how you grow up and all the experiences you make, all the decisions you make. So I think that ideas come from a lot of things. I think it's a tree of.
But I guess the question is, do any of them come from within yourself? Because the examples you provided showed you coming to learn things and understand things from your parents or from experience.
That's how humans learn things.
But
like if you put a baby down, and then a French family picks it up and takes it, it's going to learn to speak French. Put a baby down, a Russian family picks it up, it's going to go speak Russian. Like that's like how you start learning things is from your parents. And then all that stuff is from within you. So like ideas have just been passed on from generation to generation, I guess, if you look at it that way.
I think the fundamental question is in regards to where ideas come from. Do they come from within or from outside? And I don't think there's any good arguments for the idea that ideas can come from within. That in the movie, ideally, the characters would have wanted Fisher to come up with the idea himself that he needed to divest his father's company.
Correct.
But I don't think there was ever any reality or type of way in which he could come up with that idea himself. I don't think we formulate ideas ourselves. I think it's about what we're exposed to, what experiences we have, and it ultimately comes to the fact that we've talked before in other podcast episodes that we don't necessarily have free will.
Mm-hmm.
And we especially don't have free will in regards to the thoughts we have and our subconscious mind.
That's such a weird concept.
It is.
Because like you just, whatever decision you're going to make, you're going to make.
Right.
Like it's just hard to like wrap your head around that type of
and
thing.
you have no control over the thoughts that speed through your mind.
It's so weird to think of it that way.
It's like
it hurts my head.
Right. Like you think about something and then your brain begins to comprehend it afterwards.
Mm.
You can't decide what thoughts you're going to have.
It just happens.
Right.
Yeah. It's a lot.
I think it can all be traced back to experience. I can't think of an example in which someone had an original thought. Like a thought was precipitated by nothing.
What about naming the brain? Brain.
Just coming up with the word?
Yeah. It was in your head. It's not like somebody said, like, we should call it. See, that doesn't even make any sense because they had to think of it.
Right, but I guess the idea I'm putting forth is that it didn't come out of a vacuum. Some experience someone had that decided we were going to call it the brain. I don't know the etymology of the word. We could look it up, but I think it's a little trivial. Some experience they had caused them to decide, oh, well, we'll call it the brain.
Sure.
Let's move on to the topic of faith. They use the word faith a lot in the film. There's the one scene in the helicopter whenever Cobb is talking to Sato, and Cobb says, how do I know you can deliver? And Sato says, you don't. Don't you want to take a leap of faith? Or do you want to become an old man, filled with regret, waiting to die alone? And there's another scene later in the film whenever Mal's about to kill herself, and she's sitting on the ledge, and she says, I'm asking you to take a leap of faith. And Cobb says, I can't. You know I can't do that. Let's take a second to think about this. And there's several other times in the film where the word faith is used. It's mostly by Saito and Cobb. So what are your thoughts on the ways faith is included in the film, why it's included in the film, what it means, if anything?
Maul was looking at this as if it was not real. So you could kind of equate it to looking at it from like a Christian point of view, like that she wants to go to heaven, she wants to be out of this. So I think that the term was kind of used in relation to religious faith. And I think the only reason that Sato said faith was just because I think he was using it just as the expression term. I think hers was more spiritual and his was a little bit more take the risk. We need to do this, otherwise you're not going to be able to get back to your family, go back to the country. That's how I saw those two.
And that's one thing I really appreciate about Christopher Nolan as a filmmaker is that the messages you take from his films aren't necessarily direct platitudes you can apply to your life, but he teaches more about, he'll teach you the idea, and then you can decide how to best apply it or what it means. Because, yes, in regards to Saito, the film suggests sort of that faith is an essential part of action, and that without it, we can't necessarily live because we can't ever be certain. Like, certainty is not essentially possible. We might have evidence for things or no evidence for things, but regardless, we have to act. We have to make decisions. And as much baggage and negative connotations are attached to the word, we sometimes have to act on faith. That is something we have to do. But in regards to Mal, we're looking at this from the other perspective, in that faith is seen more of a delusion. It's some kind of unfounded belief that's ultimately dangerous. And I didn't necessarily get a sort of religious connotation from her, in the fact that her death would have been representative of moving on to some other afterlife, which I didn't even think about this, but could be some other dream state at that point. But I feel like the film treated her view of faith as something a little more negative, and it treated it a little more derogatorily. But I don't know. In terms of leaps of faith being necessary in the face of uncertainty, I tend to refrain from making decisions that I don't have any amount of evidence for. Like, if there's no evidence to point me towards a belief that I would hold, then I would just rather not have an opinion. It doesn't make any sense to form a belief or form an opinion on something on faith alone. Because you can have faith in anything. I had faith in Santa for a good part of my childhood, and look where that got me.
Yeah. Parents lie to you.
Sons of bitches. I was pissed when I found out.
I don't even remember finding out.
I was like, shit. I didn't say shit. I was a little kid. But you know what I mean. Let's move on and talk about the film Inception as a metaphor for cinema itself. There's the one scene you already mentioned where Cobb talks about dreams always picking up in the middle of actions. Cobb says, you create the world of the dream, you bring the subject into that dream, and they fill it with their subconscious. And then eventually he says, dreams feel real while we're in them, right? It's only when we wake up that we realize how things are actually strange. So let me ask you a question. You never remember being in the beginning of a dream, do you? You always wind up right in the middle of what's going on. And I think the same can be said of any scene in a movie. As you know, filmmakers and writers who are always told to come in as late as possible, enter the scene in the middle of the action, in the middle of the conflict. And I think that's definitely true of dreams. There's no beginning. It's just the dream. And each character in the film also plays a sort of similar role in that of who you would have on a sort of movie crew. You have Dom, who's sort of the director, and Ariadna's the screenwriter, and Arthur's the producer, and then you have Eames, who's sort of the actor, and then Saito is sort of like the money, the bankroll, the production company, and you have all these people playing their specific parts to put on this sort of production, to put on this sort of ruse, which is sort of interesting. And at the same time, movies themselves are sort of a shared dream experience. We all enter this dark theater, and we just sort of watch these images play on a screen in front of us, and we literally witness someone else's quote-unquote dream. In this case, we watched Christopher Nolan's dream flash across the screen at us. And we cut around to sort of different times and locations. And in real life, this would be jarring. We would have a hard time comprehending what's happening. But I think movies also sort of match the way in which we jump around and move around in dreams. And you can wake up, or you could start a dream in your house and you're moving around, and then you walk into another room and you're at work. And it happens seamlessly and without question, without problem. And on top of that, I think your senses in a dream also tend to sort of focus on the action at hand, much like in a film, and not necessarily the surrounding reality of it. You sort of have this suspension of disbelief, and it's required to make sense of films and dreams at the same time. So it's more about the action at hand and the sort of feeling associated with it, not the sort of logic and rationality to it. And I guess I have a very fond appreciation for this film, and ultimately the sort of parallel that Nolan seems to have deliberately drawn between dream worlds and film worlds. And I think it makes films that much more powerful because I never looked at them in a way that paralleled them to dreams, to worlds we could inhabit at a time that share so many parallels to how our brains work and how we think and feel. What do you think about that?
I didn't even think of Inception as a metaphor for a movie at all, but I absolutely see why. Yeah, moving forward, looking at other movies, that kind of I can see the direct relationship between that, because you always project yourself onto the main character, and you
always,
and unless you really see like a supporting character that you're like, I'm totally that guy, and then you picture your best friend as the other guy. So I can absolutely see that how that links up.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
And even if it's not a character you can necessarily resonate with, I feel like you sort of pour yourself into the cracks of the world that's been created. And it's ultimately the films that we dislike the most that I think are the ones we don't resonate with and connect with, because we feel like we can't insert ourselves into it. There's nothing with which we can connect ourselves to in the film. And those are definitely my least favorite films, are ones that I can't forge a sort of connection with. And in that regard, it makes me think of how I relate as a person to dreams and cinema at the same time, and how I sort of put my subconscious into these sorts of things. But I mean, ultimately, I think the reason this is sort of included in the film, and the reason Nolan makes this point, is that dreams, much like films, can enrich our real lives because of the sort of way in which we're exposed to sort of new stimuli and new ideas. But ultimately, we have to be able to accept that these things need to enrich our lives in reality and not become them.
Mm-hmm. Which is kind of what the whole idea of this podcast is doing.
Right.
Which I think it's pretty profound that that's what movies do.
Right. And I guess on some deep level, I always knew that. I always understood that, but I never sort of articulated it as an idea.
Yeah.
And it was something I accepted. And if you would have mentioned, I would have said, yeah, that sounds right. Great. Good job. But it didn't hit home until I saw this movie this past time.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's begin to wrap this up here and move on to the ending of the film.
God damn it. That ending.
Inception has one of
so good.
the most notorious endings, I would say, in all of cinema. Even though it's not that old of a film, it's definitely up there with one of the most profound endings. So off the bat, let's just start with, what are your thoughts on the ending?
That dreidel, that thing drops.
It's a top.
It spins.
Okay, it does spin.
It drops.
So it drops, Cobb's back in reality.
Yeah, I feel like you hear it ending. Like
There's a distinct wobble right before we cut out.
There's a distinct wobble. There's a couple distinct wobbles, and I believe that the top fell over.
Why do you think that?
We saw his children's faces.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if they wouldn't have shown us the children's faces, he would have been in the dream still. I think the fact that the audience got to see his children's faces means that we're in reality now.
Mm-hmm.
Because every time that we saw his kids, it was in the dream world, and we didn't see their faces.
Right.
So that's why I think that. Oh, and all the people in the dream acknowledged him significantly when he was walking out of the airport. All of like his people acknowledged him. So I don't know. They could have been projections, but I don't know. I really think that he was in the real world just because of the kids' faces.
I'm skeptical to believe that he's in the real world, as I think this film taught me I should be. Mainly because, well, one, I love the idea of the totem in the film. I think it's an awesome concept, and it's a very interesting thing that Nolan explored. But the flaw of the totem is that it only tells you if you're not in someone else's dream. So because Cobb is the only person who knows the weight of his top, if he's within Arthur's dream, the top will spin forever. It's only when he's in reality or in one of his own dreams that the top will fall, because even his subconscious mind knows the weight of the top. So Cobb could still be in one of his own dreams if the top is going to fall. And beyond that, the totem isn't even his to begin with. It was Mal's. And there's several different film theories online that posit that his real totem is his wedding ring, because he only seems to wear his wedding ring within the dreams. It's really just a hypothesis put forth. But I feel as if Cobb is still living within Saito's dream, because once they went down from level 3 to level 4 dream into limbo land, and then Ariadne and Fisher went back up to level 3, back into the Snow Fortress Hospital, and they finished the Inception process, the rest of them woke up. Because Cobb and Saito didn't ride the kick back up, whenever Cobb did eventually find Saito, when he killed himself, why would they have risen back up to the top reality level without the kick? Wouldn't they have only gone up one level to the third dream world? I feel as if when Saito killed himself, he went up the next level, and he just assumed it was a reality. He assumed that was real, and so he filled that world with his subconscious mind, which was his conception of the real world. And so he called his person, and his person dropped the charges on Cobb, and then Cobb went home and did shit. Ultimately, it can go either way. We have no proof of either one. But does it matter? Do you think it matters if the top stopped spinning?
Well, yeah.
Or it kept spinning?
Yeah.
Why?
It's whether or not he's in a dream or not.
I think because Nolan left it purposely ambiguous, that he's saying, one, we can never know the true nature of reality. So we can never be completely certain or uncertain of if we're in a dream. Because, again, if the top did stop spinning, he could still be in his own dream. I don't think that's impossible. But ultimately, I don't think we should care, because the whole time Cobb was just wanting to get back to his family. And if he was unable to do that before then, because of whatever sort of mental baggage he had, that he couldn't create that in his own dream world, even if he is still dreaming, he's now in a dream world where he can experience that. And if he thinks it's real, I don't know if it matters that it's ultimately not, if it isn't. Like, would you live any differently now if you knew that this wasn't reality? Mm-hmm. How?
I don't know. I just know that it wouldn't be the same.
I don't know what I would do. Like, I can't conceive of what I would do differently if I found out that this wasn't reality and I didn't have some power or have some control over escaping it. Like, if I was told there's some higher level of reality that I wasn't experiencing, okay, that sucks. Like, I wish I could experience that, but, like, this is where I am and this is what I have. This is the world. And in Cobb's case, he has his kids. I think if Nolan ultimately wanted us to understand, to know for sure, he would have showed us.
I agree.
But he didn't.
I agree.
So
that's just my theory. I think he's in reality.
Right. I guess a more important question would be, why doesn't Cobb wait to see if the top stops to fall?
That would be the only reason I think he's not in reality, is because he ran to see his kids immediately. I don't know. But I think he's in reality because we saw their faces.
Right. Is this Cobb's leap of faith? Has he finally come to understand what it means to take a leap of faith?
No.
I seem hard-pressed to believe that
this was catharsis.
That's all it was?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think he was able to take a leaf from Saito and from Mao in regards to when certainty or uncertainty becomes irrelevant. And from both of them, he was able to learn, in their conceptions of faith, he was able to learn when it doesn't matter, when faith can be enough. At the end of the day, all he cared about was his kids, and he had them. And so reality, non-reality, I guess, becomes meaningless at that point. I don't know if I agree with that, but definitely catharsis. But yeah, reality can be subjective. Cobb says, this is my reality, and I think he's just cool with it.
I still think it's conscious. Conscious makes reality.
Yeah, consciousness is a factor, but it's about perspective and the ability to perceive. You can't change the nature of reality, but you can decide how you perceive it and decide what is ultimately real. That's some crazy deep shit.
That's a lot.
I'm gonna have some trouble sleeping tonight.
Maybe.
Not you?
Not me.
No?
Nah, I'll go right to bed.
Oh, good. This shit keeps me up at night. Just like, is this real? Okay, everyone. I think that's all we have for this episode of Movies to Watch Before You Die. Thanks, Stan, for joining me this week.
Of course. Glad
Another
to be here.
Crazy deep discussion.
Keeps you thinking. Something to talk about with people.
Definitely. Yeah. Dreams fascinate me. I wish I understood them better. I wish I knew a little more so that I could have a much better educated conversation with people and just stop being so uncertain about things. But such is life.
Yeah, we'll traverse.
Yeah, onward. Nevertheless, we will persist.
Yes.
As always, links are entered by the film are in the show notes at markyasica.com. Inception is definitely a film you're going to want to see again. Got to make heads or tails of it somehow. And stay tuned for episode 11 of the podcast next Thursday, where we'll break down the 1968 film 2001, A Space Odyssey, and discuss a ton of themes from artificial intelligence to evolution to man's search for meaning in the universe. Make sure you give it a watch before next week. Links for the film are also in the show notes. And if you would like to support Movies to Watch Before You Die, How about signing up for a free trial of Amazon Prime via the affiliate link in the show notes? Amazon Prime membership gets you unlimited free 2-day shipping, access to Kindle ebooks, and the ability to instantly watch thousands of movies and TV shows from Amazon's virtual library. You get all those awesome things free for 30 days, and for every new sign up, Amazon tosses some money our way. It's really a win-win situation, so look for the link in the show notes and get started today. And finally, let us know what you're thinking and feeling after listening to this week's episode. You can find us on social media via the show note links at markyazica.com, and while you're there, be sure to join our mailing list to stay up to date on all things related to movies to watch before you die. All right, everyone, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.